Hi, everybody. I'm so glad you joined us today. Good to see a lot of familiar faces. Before we begin, I'd like to offer a word of thanks to the Procacci family, to Joanne and Phil for creating our Artist in Residence program. I don't know if you know, but we are blessed to have Cantor Kent with us for the entire month. He's going to be teaching 3 of our Lunch and Learns and then a program called Behind the Scenes Shards, his one-man show on March 21st. And he's going to be joining us for Shabbat services on March 19th. So thank you to the Procacci family. I am a big Evan Kent fan. I met him years ago when I was a cantorial soloist at a biennial, and he was teaching a seminar about Jazz Shabbat, which having these innovative, creative, out-of-the-box Shabbats, that was a new thing in those days, in the dark ages when we were there. And I went up to Evan afterwards and said, how do I learn to do this? And he was so sweet, and he sent me music, and he emailed me his CDs, and I was so grateful that he was so gracious and giving. And I'm so excited that you're going to be studying with him this month. Evan is live from Jerusalem, where he moved in 2013 with his husband, Rabbi Don Gore. He serves Beth Shalom in Milan occasionally, or maybe more than occasionally. Hopefully he'll be back there for the High Holy Days. He graduated from the Hebrew Union College, where he received his ordination and his master's in sacred music. And then he served Temple Isaiah in Los Angeles as their cantor for 25 years. In 2014, he received his doctorate in music education from Boston University. And he's currently on the faculty of Hebrew Union College in Jerusalem, where he teaches liturgy and sacred music. He is a theater buff, and in Jerusalem has starred in productions of Guys and Dolls and Next to Normal, Avenue Q, Singing in the Rain, and many others. He is an avid runner. And one of the great things that he's created there is his one-man show, Shards. And we're going to learn more about that later in the month. But it's my pleasure to introduce Cantor Evan Kent. So I hope you enjoy your time with him.
Thank you so much. What a joy. There is no upside to COVID-19 or Corona, but the only silver lining is that I am able to zoom into Florida so quickly, and I'm just flying around the world. I'm in Florida this week. I'm in Atlanta next week. I'm teaching in Tel Aviv tomorrow. So I just want to, first of all, thank you, Cantor Lori, for having me. It really is a joy. We planned this program like a year and a half ago, and we didn't know sort of what the world was going to happen, and then we canceled my live appearance, and then we arranged for me to be here virtually. So I actually am in Jerusalem. This is my studio, my office, part of our apartment. I do have a cat. I have 2 cats. One of them loves to appear on the screen, and she will probably wander through at some moment and she might even disconnect me. So a little bit about myself. I'm going to share my PowerPoint. Let's see if I can make this work. And if you have any questions or anything, please make sure to put it in the chat. So I'm a cantor. I'm an actor. I'm a Jew. I'm an Israeli. I'm an American. But I am also a storyteller. And I will tell you a little bit how I began telling stories. But I think we are all at heart storytellers. Judaism has survived for centuries because of the stories that we tell. We are a storytelling people. Just think of sort of what we've been through last week. We told the story of Purim, which is Vayehi b'mei Achashverosh, Achashverosh, Hamolech meho duval kuhush. Don't ask me to chant anymore. I probably have no more of it memorized. But the Megillat Esther is a great story. And in a few weeks, we're going to tell another story. We're going to tell the story of Pesach, just a month apart. So for those of you that have to start your Pesach cooking and cleaning, you're already late. So we always say, Ma nishtana halayla hazeh. Why is this night different from all other nights? And we tell stories over and over again. Some of the most wonderful stories I remember being told, standing in the kitchen between my mother and my grandmother, we're sitting at the kitchen table. I actually have a little J&F box on my counter right here in my office. And one of the reasons I made Aliyah is because the stories that my great-grandmother told me standing outside the subway station on 170th Street on Broadway on the Upper West Side, actually in Washington Heights, and asking for people to put money in the pushka for children and for the Jewish war effort, the War of Independence. So we are a storytelling people, and I'm going to tell you the kinds of stories that people tell and the kind of stories that I tell. So we will not have a chance, there are too many of us for each of us to sort of go around and tell us who we are, but we're going to have a chance to do that in some breakout rooms a little bit. But let me tell you a little bit about myself. As Cantor introduced me, I'm Evan Kent. I served for 25 years at Temple Isaiah in Los Angeles, a congregation of about 1,200 families. And while I was there, I also taught at Hebrew Union College. It had always been a lifelong dream to make Aliyah, to move here to Israel. And in 2013, we did that. It wasn't retirement. It was really sort of chapter 2, because I teach at Hebrew Union College. I teach in the Department of Sacred Music there. I also teach at the Levinsky School of Education in Tel Aviv, which is a frightening experience because there I teach in Hebrew. And I'm always wondering if the students actually have any idea what I'm talking about, they might not. I'm told that they actually do understand me, but that's, I think, miraculous in itself. I will tell you that that I began, so Cantor Brock started to tell you about my show, my one-person show called Shards, and shards, of course, are pieces of glass or pottery. And why did I begin sort of this adventure into storytelling? I had been a storyteller before, but we made Aliyah. We moved to Israel in 2013. And if you recall, in 2014, the Gaza War began. And now, without getting into the politics of sort of the Gaza War, for those of us who grew up in America, or for all of us who know America, I was living in Jerusalem, and around the perimeter of Jerusalem, maybe 2 miles from my house, missiles were landing. And I had never heard an air raid siren in my life, except during drills when I was in elementary school, when we did duck and cover drills, which, as my grandmother would have said, Gornish Telfin, if something had actually happened in one of those drills. And I was somewhat traumatized, probably was experiencing some PTSD. And a very close friend said, I think you need to see somebody, because I was somewhat dysfunctional. This is not a secret. And I saw a wonderful psychologist whose first question to me was, why are you here? Not why are you here in my office? That was quite obvious because I was somewhat traumatized. But why are you here in Israel? And I always knew I wanted to make Aliyah, but what I had to discover or rediscover for myself was why I had made this journey. Why had I traveled from LA to Jerusalem 7,000 miles? And what I discovered is that I came from a family of sojourners and travelers and immigrants. And that's what Shards is about. This story, Shards, it's the pieces that we try to put together in our lives. It's stories of my Aliyah intertwined with stories of my grandparents and great-grandparents' immigration from Eastern Europe to the United States. And what I discovered is that even though I had come to Israel and most of my dreams had been realized living here, a lot of the time, including having missiles landing outside of Jerusalem, sometimes where we end up is not exactly what we had planned. And we have to do our best and put those pieces together and create a new whole out of what we've been given. And that is really the theme of the show. I will also say that I actually, this year, as a result of this pandemic, I've actually written a new show, which I will give Cantor Brock some information. It's really a sort of a Passover show. It's all about Seder, and it's all about sort of how we pull Seder. Seder becomes a central issue, a central event in Jewish lives. So who am I? Who are you? Why storytelling? Because stories take us amazing places. Different from monologues. Monologue is when a character on stage shares with you his or her inner thoughts. Storytelling asks you to sort of enter my world for a moment. And what happens in storytelling is an amazing thing, is that you go with me. I can tell you the most fantastical stories, the most unbelievable, the craziest stories, and you actually go with me. That's sort of something that the mind and the spirit does when somebody tells you stories. So in Jewish storytelling, there are three major ways that we tell stories. There's Talmud and Midrash, which helps explain sort of either Talmud explains law or Midrash explains sort of episodes in the Torah that we might not understand. There are folkloric stories, stories like the best example, sort of like the wise men of Chelm. Those are folkloric stories. The stories that I tell, most of the stories that I tell are what we call life stories, which is sort of what are the stories from my own Jewish upbringing, my own Jewish experience that have helped to inform who I am. I will say, wait, I'm getting her. I tell one wonderful story. Maybe I'll share with you maybe next week. I tell a great story it's a folkloric story about a goat, and she loves to sing. And maybe I'll share with you that story. It's a beautiful story. It's very sad. Do you want to tell your story? Okay, you'll tell your story next week. I do use puppets quite a bit. I have one puppet that looks like me, which we call the Doppelganger. So he shows up now and then whenever I talk to myself. And Yael the goat has made many, many appearances. So here we go. The one thing to remember is even though a lot of storytellers are funny, storytelling is not stand-up. Jerry Seinfeld is not a storyteller. He is a stand-up comedian. Great storytellers, I would say David Sedaris, if you have not heard or read his stuff is like laugh out loud funny. Spalding Gray of blessed memory was a great storyteller. The Moth on NPR or wherever you find the Moth storytelling series is an amazing series. Listening to people tell stories. I don't tell my stories exactly as the Moth. It's actually very interesting. They tell very informal stories, but they're very much it's a style of telling an informal story. If you want to find a new storyteller, she has two specials on Netflix. I'd recommend a woman by the name of Hannah Gadsby. She's Australian, and she tells stories like I've never experienced before. It's like a roller coaster. She has you laughing, and then you're crying. And it's an amazing thing. I'd also recommend a woman by the name of Karen Golden, who is my teacher, my mentor, and my director from Los Angeles. She is a brilliant, brilliant storyteller and is right now in the midst of writing a story about her family's experiences in Lithuania during the Second World War. She is a brilliant, brilliant storyteller. So the goals of this class, and this is a 3-session class, and you can come for one class, you can come for 2 classes. I'd love to see you at all 3 classes, is we want you, by the end of this, to be able to tell a good story. And a lot of us are great storytellers because you've sat with friends and told stories. But to understand sort of the basics of a good story, what makes a good story? And it's not just like telling like a Bubba that could be a great story, but there are techniques to telling really good stories. And we want you to share some of your stories. We're going to share some of those stories tonight. And sometimes we might have a final presentation. Maybe our last class, a few of you will share with us your stories. And that would be really a lot of fun to hear your stories. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to break it up into groups. And we like to use what I call story prompts to get these story ideas going. So for example, I am and you just answer the question. I am, and you can say, I am a grandmother. I am a father. I am a sister. I am neurotic. I am Jewish. I am a Floridian. Or I was a cat person. That's why I guess that's why I put a cat there. I was a cat. Maybe you were a cat. I was a cat person. I was a sister, and and then blank is the story of my life. So these are the 3 prompts that I want you to use. I am, what are you now? I was, and blank is the story of life. So for me, it would be black and white cookies are the story of my life. We spend a lot of time in cities across the United States hunting down the ultimate black and white cookies. I will also say I spend a lot of time looking for great bagels. There are no great bagels in Israel, so there just don't exist. But what is the story of your life? a great aunt is the story of my life. Being a cellist is the story of my life. So we're going to break you into small groups, about 5 of you. There are about 25 people on the screen. I'll probably have a chance to wander in and out of the group. It's going to take about 5 or 6 minutes. For all of you, if you don't know each other, introduce each other to everybody. I have a feeling this is a group that might know each other. And then we want you to say, I am, I was, and blank is the story of my life. All right, so are we ready to, Ross, can we do those groups?
I am doing it right now. Hello, Rachel. Rabbi. All right, let's get you into a room. There you go. Sorry about that. I'm trying to get Kenner Brock back. Does not seem she wants to come back. It doesn't want to move her back unless she did it ask you to join back? You're muted.
Yes, it did. It asked me to join back.
Okay, I guess she doesn't want to come back.
Okay. It's sort of it's a great science fiction movie, like sort of people just vanish into Zoom somewhere.
Yep. Yes, they do. Let's do this. Is there any messages that you want me to broadcast to all the rooms?
If you want to put in the chat, the 3 questions are I am, I was, and blank is the story of my life.
And what was the last one?
Blank. And blank is the story of my life.
Oh, you're muted, Kenner.
I said, I'm sorry, I was helping them because one woman couldn't figure out how to see everybody. So should we bounce from room to room and help? Or no?
If you'd like to, you're
How do
welcome to.
we do that?
I can send you to a room.
All right.
Just click on breakout rooms and then you can pick which room and click join. Why don't you go to room 1 and I'm gonna go to room 4.
Okay.
Let's work towards the middle.
All right.
See you guys in a few.
Bye. It's just funny because some of you answered so quickly and some of you had longer stories. I'm excited. One of my teachers from the Hebrew Union College is here, Rabbi Kim Geringer. So welcome, Kim. What a treat.
Thank you, and for me too.
Where's Kim? She was on my screen a minute ago.
Hi, Evan.
Hi, Kim.
What a treat.
Oh, this is so much fun. We're just flying around the world. So Roberta says, I couldn't unmute on the cell phone. Now she's on the computer. Okay. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Did we all come back? Let's go back to the beginning. So actually, I'm going to stop sharing and we'll come back. In my group, I actually only made it to one group. I heard some great stuff. Blank is the story of my life. And it was Brian, I think Brian Sindel, who actually said, I used to be a human being. And I think that sort of sums up how a lot of us feel sort of sitting here in Zoom rooms. Does anybody else want to share what I am or I was? There's such great prompts. There's such great opportunities for us to begin a story. I used to be a human being. One of the great ways, by the way, as we start to think about, sort of crafting stories, is that one of the great ways to start a story is to say, so. When you say so, it assumes that everybody knows where you are and sort of, it's like in the middle of a conversation. So if Brian were to say, so, I used to be a human being, we're already involved and we're saying, Brian, you're not a human being? So anybody else want to share what I am, I was, or a blank is the story of my life? Let's see if we can see somebody raise their hand. Don't be shy. You're not shy people. Cantor, Lori.
So I said I am curious and passionate and creative, and I used to be a perfectionist. So, and I said change is the story of, or constant change is the story of my life.
That's so beautiful. That's really very profound. I mean, I've done this workshop a few times and nobody's ever said change is the story of my life. Sort of, I usually get responses like being a plumber is the story of my life. But anybody else, and then we're going to move on. Anybody else want to share? I am, I was, and blank is the story of my life.
Hi, I'm Aileen.
Hi, Aileen.
I don't care about the I am and I was, but the story of my life, I really feel that as I've gotten older, I've noticed this more and more about myself, that the story of my life is really where, is really my family and my forefathers and where I fit into my family. I'm very family oriented and I don't have children. And so my family is my real family is very important to me. But I'm also the family historian and everything else. And I really feel that as I've gotten older, it's been more and more important to me about what came before me and what's going to be after me.
Very true. I will let you in on a secret. Shh, Aileen, don't tell anybody. That is why I'm convinced I tell these stories, because I will explain this when I talk on Friday night as part of the Friday night service. But my grandparents and great-grandparents were not remarkable people. They just weren't. They went to work, they came home, they listened to the radio, and then they eventually watched TV. But what I have done, I have exhumed them. I have given life to them in a way that they could have never imagined. In my grandmother's wildest dreams, she could have never imagined that I would be in Jerusalem telling her story. So, I mean, I think that's sort of fascinating. And what we do as storytellers, we not only give life and sort of perpetuity to people who have come before us, but we also give life and sort of permanence to ourselves. And that is a constant refrain in my own life, is like, since I do not have children, it's like, who will remember me? So we don't, it's starting to sound like a Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur sermon. It's not. But I do want to go back to our PowerPoint, and let's go back to the beginning. So when we tell stories, and Aileen just gave us an instance of this, when we tell stories, we notice that recurring themes occur over and over again. For example, anybody, when Larry David, so Larry David is up in the corner here, when Larry David tells his stories, when we've all said, Curb Your Enthusiasm, I hope some of you have seen that show. What is Larry David telling us? Anybody want to either put it in the chat, or what is his recurring story? It's over and over the same thing. Anybody? I'll tell you. He's neurotic. He's just very neurotic. He's strange. He's neurotic. He's always sticking his foot in his mouth. What is the story of Seinfeld? I would guarantee that we've all seen at least one episode of Seinfeld. What is the story of Seinfeld? Anybody? You can unmute yourself and say, call it out.
The mundane is important.
The mundane is important, right? The mundane is important, and there's no the story. Our story is no story. What about we all might be a little. I'm not. I only know sort of a little bit about Beyonce. But if you've listened to Beyonce, that's her in the lower left-hand corner. What is Beyonce's story? Anybody? Well, now you're assigned at the next.
I think it's I Will Survive.
I Will Survive and female empowerment. Right, exactly. I want you all to go to listen to Beyonce's music this week. She's a very, very empowering singer. And on the lower right-hand side over here is Georgia O'Keeffe. It's one of her illustrations. Anybody know what Georgia O'Keeffe's constant recurring theme is?
Look at the minutia.
Yeah, so she's looking at the small aspect, but she's blowing it up. So we all, as singers, as actors, as comedy writers, we all have a story to tell, and often we tell the same story. I tell a lot of stories about food. I tell a lot of stories about grandparents. I can't tell stories about what it was like to play on the high school football team because I didn't do that. So when we tell life stories, when you share your stories, we can really only tell things that actually happened to us. I can't tell you things that I don't know anything about, because within 20 seconds of me telling that story, you're going to say, he never played football, and it's going to become quite obvious. So we're going to break out into rooms again. Some of the best stories come from things about us that are just different. Like, wait, here comes the cat. The cat wants to, she saw the cat on the, here, Griffin, say hello to everybody. They're in Florida. Our quirks, our strange little things are always interesting. They make interesting stories. I love cats. I'm an anxious person. And I collect pens. I have pencil cups and pens. I have drawers filled with them, and I have to write with specific ones. This is the only mechanical pencil I will write with. So we're going to break you up into groups again, and we want you to tell each other, not I am and I was, but what, maybe 10 is a lot. Tell each other 4 or 5 things that are just really unique to yourself. I love to roller skate. I make the best chocolate chip cookies. So we're going to break into rooms, and we will, wait, we have something going on in the chat. Somebody wrote, Rabbi Kim Geringer wrote, she wrote, I have pencils also. Yes, a lot of people. We all, I thought I was the only one until right now. I go into Staples. You can't get me out of Staples. So Ross, we're going to go into breakout rooms, and we're going to wander around and find out what your quirks are that you could maybe tell us a story about. Ross, how do I get into another breakout room? Do I just choose that? Well, welcome back, everybody. Who had the most interesting quirk in your group? Anybody? Rabbi Kim, what is your quirk other than pencils and pens that you share with me? You're now you're muted. You're unmuted.
Okay.
You're unmuted.
Okay. No, I would have said what I said about mechanical pencils even without your prompt. Yeah, I said that I do the New York Times puzzles every day, and that I cannot think if I don't use this particular mechanical pencil.
Right? Is that like this mechanical pencil?
No, I'm sorry, that one won't work.
Oh, okay. All right. Anybody else? Anybody else? I see Shirley is on my screen. Shirley, what is your quirk? Shirley Levin. Shirley, you're muted.
I was talking about the fact that there are just seemingly endless numbers of new people to meet and enjoy and get to know, that I just love meeting people, and I love knowing a lot of people and developing friendships with a lot of people. And there seems to be ultimate room for getting to know more and more people. So
Well, that's a very positive quirk. That's amazing. Very cool. Anybody else? Anybody else want to share their quirk? And then we're going to go keep moving on.
Exactly what do you define a quirk as?
Quirk is something a little odd, you know, a little, makes you a little different, makes you unique.
Okay.
You know, yeah, Barbara.
So when I get angry, my eyes turn yellow.
Okay. Is that a quirk? Barbara, is that a quirk or is that a superpower?
Someone else asked me that. I don't know where that comes from. I don't have superpowers, I promise.
They really turn yellow?
Yeah.
Well, there's a story in there. Have you scared children?
Yes, without knowing it. Okay.
Wow.
And
Okay.
then after I found out, I warned classes that if my eyes turn yellow, watch out. And I had the best behaved children ever.
Were you were a teacher also?
Yes, yes.
What grade?
Kindergarten through third was my love, but I did it up till age 21 because they were special ed.
Wow. Wow. How amazing. Barbara, the teacher, and her yellow eyes. It's a great story. All right. I'm going to go back to share screen.
I want to say something.
Yeah.
I have no quirks, but I have two friends that I can see, very close friends on here, and I can tell you all their quirks. That's all I'm saying.
That's even better.
They know who they are.
So
I wouldn't say she has no quirks.
When I tell a story, it actually is an event from my life. As I said, these life stories. But what happens is that we take an angle in the story that makes it, you know, if you say, I went to Starbucks and I ordered a cup of coffee, it's not particularly interesting. But if you tell me something really weird about that morning, or about this very special cup of coffee, or who I met, then the story becomes more than just an event, it becomes a story. So here are some storytelling aphorisms starting at the top. When it gets weird, go even further. You know, go crazy. You know, it's not just about the cup of coffee at Starbucks. It's about the people sitting around you. It's about the guy sitting next to you at Starbucks who's talking to himself. When in doubt, go deeper. You can always in a story, you can go further and further into the story. I love this one. Your best stories are yet to be lived. So, who was it? Now I don't see you on the screen, but the way we create more stories is by more experiences, meeting more people. Do something different. I walk to work here in Jerusalem. Well, I used to walk to work. Now I just sit at home. But I walk to work. It's about a 12-minute walk from my house to the college where I teach. And I walk the same way every day. But when I do something different, when I walk the long way around, or I take a walk, I actually walk past the American embassy or something like that, then you have a chance for something different to happen. Don't wait for things to happen. Make them happen. Go up and introduce yourself to somebody who you haven't seen before. But the most important thing, never put yourself in danger for a good story. It's not worth it to learn how to skydive if you really don't want to skydive. It's not worth the story. So what we're going to do is maybe for next week, if you have some time to start to think of writing a story, but since we're just a few weeks away from Passover, or a month away from Passover, I want to go into one final breakout room, and I want you to share with each other, because this can become the basis of our stories in the next couple of weeks. What is your favorite Passover memory? What is your favorite Passover memory? And what is your least favorite Passover memory? I can tell you, I won't share them now. I actually have a story that's based on my Passover memories, but I think it's fascinating because Passover is such a central event in our lives, and it is coming up. The matzah has appeared in my supermarkets here. And that means Passover is on its way. So let's go back into the breakout rooms. We're going to spend another 5 minutes or so talking about what is your favorite memory for Passover, or your favorite memory and your least favorite memory. All right?
Hi, Kim.
Hello, Sue.
How are you, Brian?
Very
Hi,
good.
Sue. How are you doing?
Good. Sorry, so sorry to hear the news, Anita.
Ugh.
Hi, Brian.
What happened?
I'm sorry.
We got kicked out of our breakout rooms.
Oh.
So who wants to share one of their Passover stories? We have a few minutes before I know you guys. We're finished here. Who anybody have a great story they want to tell? Let me just see who's here. Michelle Hershey, you were telling a story, but I didn't get a chance to hear the whole story. You want to share your favorite Passover story? Michelle, you're muted.
I was reading to the girls. I came across this the other night. I have hosted Passover for many years. My mother-in-law let me continue the tradition in my house. And my husband has a mixed family. Some of his cousins have married out of the religion. And my mother always made jokes, and she didn't mind, but when she had at her house, she would say, I have to tell everybody what to do because the shiksas won't know. So here I came across a poem written by one of the shiksas in our family, and I told her the other night, and it's just, I have to share it because it tells our story. It's really funny. My first Passover, I was so nervous. A new family, a new tradition. My notions were hilarious. Where do I sit? What do I say? Is this round stuff in front of me stuffing or pate? She gave me an assignment. That's my mother-in-law. Would you make the simmis? I tripled the recipe. Oy vey, it was limitless. The following year, she gave me a break. Don't make such a simmis, just soup and some cake. Well, the soup, it was Irish with potatoes galore. And the cake, well, it rose like never before. She said, I know what to do. A matzah, a wine, and some gefilte fish too. This she can't miss, this Irish silverglate. If she screws this one up, a big mikvah will make. So I bought the matzah by pounds from Costco and the wine and fish, white only, She loved it. She kissed me and hugged me too. And year after year, I gevelled like a Jew, brought into the family of silver and glate. And I know now without mention from A or from J that the shiksa on Passover must purchase, not make.
I love that. Thank you.
This is hysterical. You're welcome.
All right, I'm going to go back to share screen. Share. Here we go. So from current slide. So the way I work when I write stories, and everybody writes differently, I work from where I tell the story to myself. I walk around Jerusalem literally like talking to myself, and actually with the mask on, nobody can tell who's talking, but a lot of people in Jerusalem talk to themselves, so that's perfect. And then I sometimes I actually record it. I'll record it on my iPhone, and then I will then write it, and then what happens, and I'll show you, wait, I'm coming back, is I work with a script, and then eventually I turn the story into just bullet points or notes. So everybody works differently, but I would love for some of you for next week to come up with a short story. And I think our theme should be Passover. And I want you to write about the worst Seder, because we've all had great Seders. Some of us have had really bad Seders. Just come up with, let's say 2 paragraphs about your really bad Seder. And then we'll talk about it. And what I want you to do is lots of description. Tell us where you are. Tell us who you are. And then we will work with those stories and we won't get a chance to do all of them, but we'll work in some breakout rooms. And then sort of how do we take this story and really make it a story that will transcend the ages? So it's not mandatory homework. There are no grades. It just is really a way for us to sort of get to know each other and get to know our stories. We'll have time for some questions after this. If you want to send me an email, here's my email address, evanstewartkent@gmail.com, and I'm also Evan Kent on Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. If you have anything you want to share, that would be terrific. And we're here to take some questions. If anybody has any questions or anything they want to add, there's something in the chat here. Maybe Cantor, Laura, you've heard something. I'll be really sorry to miss the rest of the sessions, but next week I start teaching until the afternoon on Tuesdays. Okay, I'm sorry.
Not me. No, that's Roberta.
Roberta.
That was Roberta. I'm here. I am enjoying this, and I want to thank Cantor Evan for a wonderful session. I think it's of value as I don't know about you all, but I want to remember my family. And I think by learning to tell these stories and write them down so they come to life is so important for ourselves and for those who come after us, and to share with others.
Philip said, just fantastic. Thank you, Philip.
Good.
So I will see you. If you have any questions, I'll be here on the screen for a couple more minutes. But if you have any questions, please send them to me in an email or send them to Cantor Brock and send them to me. And I look forward to seeing you next week as we explore our own Jewish life stories.
Thank you, everyone, for participating. It was so good to be with everybody.
Thanks so much.